Hello, it's time for Combat Patrol Carnage. We're back with issue 52 and today we're going to be painting our Kahl. So we're using the paint guide that comes with the magazine and we're painting the Kronos Hegemony, which is a lovely black armour with yellow cloth. Now we've also got the brown of his leather cloak and he has quite a lot of decorative gold details as well. So this guy's going to really stand out amongst your rest of your models, which is going to be really cool. So yeah, really in-depth paint guide. We've got quite a lot of the colours now that we need to actually highlight him. So there's only a few that we're missing. We still need a red highlight, we still need a yellow highlight, and we still need a white highlight, which will all come in a future issue. So before we hit the table, shake our paints and get started, don't forget to, of course, do all the usual. Like this video if you're enjoying the content, subscribe if you haven't done so already, and of course, drop me a comment down below. Do you have a particular favourite league from the Votan? As for me, I really do kind of like the Kronos Hegemony. The black and yellow is a really interesting choice of a colour scheme. And yeah, it's a nice little bit of an advanced scheme, especially now we're getting into the later stages of the collection. Let me know your favourites in the comment section down below and how you're going to be planning on painting yours. I'm planning on doing a poll very soon on how to paint alternate paint schemes for one of the factions we haven't done yet. So get some votes in for that and we'll be able to see which of those factions will get an alternate paint video using the magazine's paint collection. Finally then, Combat Patrol Carnage is proudly sponsored by warbay.shop, your one-stop supply for all your hobby needs. They stock everything you need from getting started with your first few models to expanding your force into full-scale war, and of course, all the paints and hobby supplies you need to get your models ready for the tabletop. They also stock past and present partworks from Hachette, including Combat Patrol, so if you're looking for some extra issues to flesh out your collection, check them out. They might just have the one you're missing at a bit of a discount. So as usual, warbay.shop's link is in the video description, so do check them out. Right, let's head to the table and we'll paint our Kahl. Here we are, back with issue 52, and as you can see, we've got our Kahl. He's not focusing, there he is. Primed in matte black. I've got him attached to a temporary base, and I've got his scenic base there ready for him to be mounted to when we've finished. So we'll put this guy off to the side. We'll read through the paint guide first of all, and then we can put the paint guide into action. So without further ado, let's adjust the camera and dive right on in. So back with issue 52, past our build guide, and here we have the paint guide for our Kahl. So follow the steps in this guide to paint your Kahl, the stoic war leaders of the kin. This is a detailed model, so read this guide in full before you begin. When you're ready, gather your paints and brushes, ensure your painting area is comfortable and well lit, and perhaps most importantly, enjoy painting your model. So we want to undercoat our model with Abaddon Black. As you've seen, and mine's already base coated with matte black, but I'll give it a once over in just a sec with Abaddon Black. Next we want to pick out all of the soft fatigues with Avalanche Sunset. Tidy up any mistakes with Abaddon Black. Corax White for the inside of his cloak. Catch and Flesh for his leather and outside of his cloak. And as well as the scabbard on his waist. Mephiston Red for the little pipe coming around his right arm. As well as his scanner rune on the front of his armour. And we've got the one here on top, the crest. Next up, gold for all of the gold details. So we've got the stuff like his belt, inlays on his armor, the vein and his mask. Lots of little gold filigree on his belt as well. Lead belch was used to pick out all the remaining metallics. So the nodes on his gauntlet, his gun, this little cable here, and parts of his backpack. Finally, Screamer Pink is used to paint the handle on his little honor sword. And finally, Rakoff Flesh is used for the outer trim on his cloak, and finally McCrag Blue is used to base coat his eyes. After that, it's a shade stage, so we're going to shade all the gold with Agrax Earthshade, as well as all the silver to give it that kind of worn and oiled look. Also using Agrax Earthshade to shade down the Rakar Flesh details, as well as the Corax White. Rakar Flesh shade is used to shade the yellow cloth, as well as the coils on the Volkite Blaster. Finally, Nuln Oil is used to shade pretty much everything else, so all the browns, reds, blues, and the pinks. After that, I want to tidy up the Corax White just on the areas it's most visible. Edge highlight the armour with Mechanica Standard Grey, pick out your silver detail as well as your rivets and gold with Stormhost Silver. So there's quite a lot to do on this guy. Night Quest of Flesh is used to highlight the edges of the cloak, the folds and such. Powdered Witch Flesh is used to highlight the raised details on the trim of the cloak. Finally, Pink Horror and Calgar Blue are used to highlight the Screamer Pink and Blue respectively. Then the base our model is a little bit more complex than other basing materials, but still follows the same guide. Paint the rock and base with Mechanica Standard Grey, apply your Astra Granite, apply a Nuln Oil wash all over. Then dry brush it Administratum Grey before picking out your silver and gold details on the base there. So I won't be doing the base on camera, I'll be doing it at the same time when I'm painting the Kahl, so you'll probably see it progress as we move through the rest of this video. So without further ado then, let's bring in our Kahl and our paint station and we'll get this guy painted. So I've given this guy a once over of Avalon Black, mainly on his armour. And I've also started the base off with Mechanica Standard Grey and the Astra Granite down, so that can dry in the background while we work on the rest of the colours. So first off then, we're going to want Avalanche Sunset, and that's to paint all of the yellow fatigues. So some prepared and a small layer brush in hand, we can start applying this. So we've got areas of his trousers, just behind the armour. Behind the belt here. There you go, his sleeves. So the Avalanche Sunset kind of messily applied. We're going to do a tidy up with Abaddon Black, but first we're going to get the inside of the cloak done with Corax White, just so we don't have any darker colours mixed in with our paint water. So onto our model, we're going to get the inside of his cloak, not forgetting around his collar. Now that the tidy up is done, we're ready to move on to our next colour, and for that we're going to do all our leathers as well as the outside of his coat with Carnage Flesh. So, making sure we're not too overloaded, we've got his belt and pouch here. And most importantly, we've got the outside of his cloak. There we go, with the brown all done and drying, with 2 layers. We can move on to the rest of our matte colours, and these are just for small details, so we'll skip through them pretty quick. Mephiston Red for all our red details, which are just the little sensor on the front here and this cable here. plus the one going up over into his shield generator. We then want a tiny bit of Screamer Pink just for his little honor sword hilt. So just block that in. Like so. Next is Rack Our Flesh. This is for the trim on his cloak. So try and get both sides and work it into the recesses as well. And finally, I want my Crag Blue. This is just going to be for his eyes. We're going to try and be neat when it comes to doing the gold later, but if need be, we'll come back to this and tidy up. So just work it into the eye sockets. And when it comes to the blue, great. Then when it comes to the gold, we can tidy up around it. So with that done, we're ready to move over to our metallics. So with the colours now down, we're ready to move on to our metallics, and the first one is going to be Retributor Armour. This guy's got a lot of gold detail inlaid in his armour, his entire mask, as well as the crest over the top of his backpack there. So start with his war helm. Get a nice solid coat of this all over. We'll probably want 2 layers over the black. We got his belt buckle to do, hilt of the sword, and we got all this inlay on his armour as well. There we go, the Retributor armour applied. I'm going to have to go back in and do the eyes on his mask once it's dried. But we're ready to move on to our final metallic, which is Lead Belcher, for pretty much all the remaining details. So we want to pick out the clasps that hold his belt up either side here. Got this cable coming down across his chest. Got the tank details on his power pack. Then we got his Volkite disintegrator. Finally then, all the details on his mask gauntlet. So all these nodes, the cable, and there's joints in the fingers as well. So here's our Kahl and his base, which is coming along quite nicely. But we're now ready to move on to our next stage of the model, and this is the wash stage. So for this, we've got quite a lot of areas we've got to cover. So let's get to it with our first wash, which is Agrax Earthshade. So this is going to be for the gold, the silver, the inside of the cloak, and the trim of the cloak. So because we've got some delicate areas to work around, I'm going to use my small layer brush to apply the wash. So we'll start with the gold detail. Including his mask. We've got the whole of the Vulcanite disintegrator, giving it a nice well-oiled look. Got the inside of the cape to do, making sure we're not applying too much. So if there's too much, just wipe it away and move it about. Get all this inlay and the trim on the cloak as well. With the Agramax Earthshade dry, we can move on to our next shade, which is Reikland Flesh Shade. This is for all the yellow cloth and the coils on the Vulcanite disintegrator. So we'll get all the areas of yellow cloth. And also we'll paint the coils to give them a yellowy glow. And with that dry, we have one last shade to apply, which is non-oil. This is for the remaining colours, so the pink, the reds, and the browns. So I'm prepared. Let's apply this. So you got the red cable and lens on his chest armour here. You got the grip on his dagger. The red cable going up here and coming out for his disintegrator pistol. And the largest area to apply this shade to is his brown cloak. Being careful around that trim, making sure we don't get any of the black wash on it. Now that all of the washes have dried, we can move on to our highlight stage. So we've got one little relayer to do first, and that's Corax White just on the areas of the cloak that are more prominent and visible. So around his collar, a little bit flicking out from the back, and any areas of trim. So onto our model, we'll relayer the exposed areas of cloth on his cloak, so that we leave the brown in the recesses. Okay, the white relayered, if it'll focus, we can move on to our first highlight colour, and it's another base paint, as we're using Mechanica Standard Grey, and this is going to highlight all of the black armour. So the paint thinned down a little more than usual, so it flows better off the brush, and making sure not too overloaded, we can start. And I think we'll start here on the back of his vein, as it's a nice sharp edge that we can get at the side of our brush. And then for the other panels, we're probably going to need to use the end of our brush, just trace around them with the paint. Don't need to be too neat. Chunky highlights are perfectly fine. And it looks really good in the end result. If you go a little too much, you can always cut back in with some Avalon Black. So there we go, with the grey applied to the armour, even on the power fist there, looking really good and detailed. I might do a tidy up later on with some Avalon Black. But yeah, looks pretty good for magazine sort of standard tutorials. But moving on to the next highlight, we're going to use Night Crystal Flesh, and this is for the brown of the cloak. So there's some Night Crystal Flesh on our brush, we can start highlighting. So we're going to look for all of these sharp edges here on the cloak, any folds. Just hit these with the Night Crystal Flesh. And we want to get any other areas that have brown, such as the holster of his dagger there, his pouch and belt as well, being careful around that gold. Next up, we want powdered witch flesh, and this is to finish off the trim on the cloak. Luckily my powdered witch flesh is fairly thin enough straight out of the pot that I don't need to thin it. So we'll pick out all the raised detail here, leaving that agrax in the recesses. Moving on to our next colour, you want a tiny bit of pink horror just to highlight the grip on his little dagger. So just want a tiny bit. I'm going to try and pick out the raised details of his hilt here, leaving the shade in the recesses. Second to last colour then, a little teeny bit of Kahl blue just to pick out those eyes. And for this I'm going to use the point on my starter brush, as it's nice and thin. I got a little too much paint on there, take that off, and we'll do one eye and two eyes. Look at that, the stare of doom or judgment. And finally then we want Stormhost Silver, which I've left to last so I don't have to change my water. But for this, we're going to want to apply this to all the gold and silver, but we're going to want to make sure we don't apply too much. As I always say with this particular colour, less is more, as it can be overpowering. I'm going to use my starter brush again, I think, as the thin tip will help with precision. So what we're going to do, we're going to pick out details on the face, so the nose, the beard, the eyebrows, any segments here of armour, then we'll want to pick out all the other gold detail, like his belt here, hilt and pommel on his sword and its sheath, and then we got all the edging on the gun. There's quite a lot on this, but take your time and you'll get an awesome result. And there we go, we're glued to his base. Narun, the faux hammer, is ready to pass. Is ready to pass judgment on the enemies of the leagues. You need a little bit of tie up, I think, on the cloak there, some brown and black shade. But other than that, yeah, looking pretty nifty. Not a bad job for the sort of magazine tutorials we're given. Yeah, so there we have it. Right, up next then, we're going to try this guy out as he passes some judgment tokens around on some orcs. So we'll learn all about judgment tokens in that video. But for now, all that's left for me to do is to say thank you all very much for watching. Hope you've enjoyed this tutorial, and I will see you next time for more Combat Patrol Carnage. Goodbye.